Hey yo, welcome to the very first episode of the Best Day Ever podcast. I'm your host, Tru Sav. We are recording here live in the Bay Area, more specifically Oakland, California. This has been a long time coming. Everybody, Tru Sav, you should do a podcast. You should do this. You're so great. Well, we're going to see about that today. So, the very first thing we need to know is, who is Tru Sav? What is a Tru Sav? Why is there a Tru Sav? Really, today started because somebody is a biter. If you don't know what a biter is someone who copies your style, your swag, as the kids would say today, and tries to emulate it and doesn't give you credit for it. Now, under normal circumstances, I would let something like this slide. But I worked way too hard for this name to let somebody just bite it like that. So this is why we're here today. Now again, I'm not here to talk about your religion or your politics or what $1 million person threw a ball at what. That's not what we're really here to talk about. We're really here to talk about why things are the way they are. How we can enjoy our lives and have fun with our friends and family members. And sometimes when you got to get rid of your friends and family members, it's not going to be easy conversations, or they might not even be deep conversations sometimes, but they're conversations nonetheless. Sometimes these things need to be said. You need to have someone to bounce ideas off of, and that's me. So, the number one thing, if you feel like I know what I'm talking about, I don't know what I'm talking about, or if there's something that I said that wasn't true and you feel like you could help me out, feel free. Drop me a line for you kids. That means write a letter or tell me what's going on at bestdayeverpodcast@gmail.com. That'll make things a whole lot easier for both of us, so that way we can interact with each other. Also, don't forget to follow me at Tru Sav Comedy. That's Mr. TRUSAV Comedy at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. Now, who is Tru Sav? He's just some guy talking into a microphone? Yeah, kind of. I am from, I would say, we were middle class. We lived on the nice side of town, I guess, if you can say that. I thought I was poor. Well, I thought we were middle class, but I didn't realize we were poor until I became an adult. Two-parent households. I had a younger sister, two older sisters, an older brother. The older siblings didn't live with us. It was me and my younger sister that lived together. I went to private school from kindergarten to 7th grade. Private school was a little different. It was a lot of focus on education, more individualized attention, not a lot of tomfoolery, foolishness. I enjoyed it. It was all I knew. I played at the time, when I was younger, I did all the sports all year round: basketball, baseball, football. So not your American football, but soccer. I've got some rather interesting soccer pictures that I'll post on my Instagram later. I think you guys will enjoy those. The one constant out of all those years, if I wasn't playing sports or wasn't doing something like that, was church. And I mean church. Let's see. Tuesday was YPWW. Wednesday was Bible study, followed by choir rehearsal. Friday night was the young people meeting. Saturday was soul winning. Sunday morning started at 8 o'clock. You had early morning service. Then you had Sunday school, followed by 11 o'clock service. And then you got to come back at 6 o'clock for a night service. Now, that was always fun. That, more than anything, I would say, molded and shaped who I am today. I'm not a hardcore believer of said Bible. I mean, I feel like the Bible has a lot of interesting stories and interesting points. I view it more as Aesop's fable of sorts. I shouldn't say Aesop's Fable, that's not right. I don't take the book literally. I take it more as there's lessons to be learned. Like, do I think that Moses stood up there on a rock and opened his hands and the Red Sea opened? Not necessarily. Maybe Moses was lost in the desert for 40 years and it taught him how to get around. But that's another conversation for another day. Now, after private school, which was pretty fun, I went to a public middle school. And that's where things got exciting. Because for me, I had never been to a school that wasn't a private school. And in private school, the focus is on your education. There's no disruptions in class because you're paying to go there. So there's no real class clown, anything like that, because you're paying to be there. So you want to learn and you want to excel, so on and so forth. Now, to go from that to a public middle school where kids were fighting, smoking weed in class, you're at that age where puberty hits, so boys and girls are doing what boys and girls do. I lost my mind. I mean, now, up until that point, education was really important. I was on my homework. I was heads and shoulders above other kids, reading, math, all that type of stuff, science. It was a good time. But once girls came into the equation, I wasn't as focused as I used to be. Now, this wasn't when the Tru Sav was born, but this was when he was in the womb, kind of gestating, growing arms, legs, head, stuff like that. This is where I met the original Tru Savs, Jimmy D Rock, Mr. Savtacular, also known as Phonetics, Dagwood, Dome Capone, Simply was there. The rest will come later. So, middle school goes by. I'm middle of the road. I didn't really get in trouble a lot. I did silly stuff. Make silly comments, stuff like that. I didn't play sports for any of the school teams. At this point, basketball, I didn't have it. Baseball, I still played in like a private league. Soccer, I still played. This was getting to the point where you had to run a whole lot. So I was really kind of falling out of love with it. I graduated, 1996? Well, I got promoted. I went to the Elk Grove High School. And at the time, there was probably 2,200 students. And out of the 2,200 students, there was 10 black ones. And I think to this day, I can still name all 10 of them. You'd have to give me a minute, but I can pretty sure I can come up with them. That summer, I tried out for football my freshman year, and it was the worst. I went through the whole 2 weeks, tryouts, did all this stuff, did all my stuff for the summertime, and come to find out I didn't have the grades. So I did all of that for nothing. But I did meet a very important cast of characters that would be very important later on. At this point, I was still a relatively good kid. I thought drugs were bad. I wasn't drinking, anything like that. Nothing wild or anything. I was still a good student. Went through my first year. Nothing too exciting happened. Nothing really memorable. And I transferred to another high school. My parents, for whatever reason, decided they didn't want me there. So I transferred to Kennedy High School. Now, Kennedy is in Sacramento. And Kennedy was the all-black high school. Yeah, the way I could describe Kennedy would be, it's every school you've ever seen in a hood movie, with metal detectors and the kids acting. Actually, you know what? The best way to describe it would be Lean on Me. If you've ever seen the movie, no. What is that movie? Joe Clark? Yeah, Lean on Me. Yeah, with Morgan Freeman, all that type of stuff. Mr. Clark. Yeah, that described Kennedy. Now, for me, this was beyond a culture shock. Now, the public high school or public middle school was one thing. The all-white high school, okay, that wasn't that bad. This was a completely different animal. I lived within walking distance from the school, which was fine. But The kids were different. The teachers were different. They talked to you in a completely different manner. At Elk Grove, the teachers and faculty spoke to you with a little bit of respect. Like, they weren't outright disrespectful. At Kennedy, they talked to you like you were an inmate. There was no please, thank you. It was do it, or we'll call the school resource officer and you're going to jail. And if you treat kids like inmates, they're going to act like inmates. I think my most fond memory was every week there was a fight. And if it got to Friday and there wasn't a fight, someone would just randomly pick someone and they would just accost them. That was it. I remember I was in my sophomore English class was a college prep English class, and they were teaching us how to find verbs in a sentence. Yes, how to find verbs in a sentence. And these are 10th graders. Ooh, excuse me. So yeah, Kennedy was not an academic powerhouse. We can say that much. I did play football for the first time there. This was an adventure because everyone that I played with had played since Junior Midgets, but I had never played before. The most awkward day would have to be the very first day when we're putting our pads on. So we're in the locker room. People are putting their shoulder pads on, putting their thigh pads and stuff on. I've only watched football on TV and in video games, so I have no idea how to put any of this stuff together. So I just put the pants on, put the pads like where they were supposed to go, and just walked out. Now, anyone who's played football is laughing right now because they know there's specific slots that the pads go in, and all my pads fell out. So I finally had to ask somebody, like, yo, like, where do these go? And they're like, you don't know? I was like, oh, well, at Elk Grove, we had different pants, and they had these things. And they were like, you don't know, do you? And I was like, nah, I don't know. So they showed me, and we go out there. I didn't reinvent the wheel. I wasn't the best thing out there, but I mean, we were sophomores. I started every game. I was decent. Now, the problem being with them not being organized is that we had, I think, a hall monitor, a guy from the cafeteria, and some guy who lived with his mom as our head coach. And all three levels ran 3 different offenses and 3 different defenses. So it was horrible. I'm not even going to get into it. But one thing I do distinctly remember is we played Jesuit High School. If you're from Sacramento, you know who they are. And I had a great game. Great game. So after the game, the coaches come up. Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Tru Sav? We'd like to offer you a scholarship. I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm in high school. And they were like, well, yeah, Jesuit's a private Catholic high school. And if you'd like to, we'd like to offer you a scholarship so you can come play here with us. There's no need for you to play at Kennedy. Like, they're never going to do anything. So I don't know. I'm a sophomore in high school. I don't know. So I talked to my parents, tell them what's going on. What I didn't notice was that my entire team, coaches included, were watching this conversation. So I come to practice on Monday, like nothing happened, and the whole team doesn't talk to me. So I'm like, hey, what's going on? Oh, you think you're better than this and this and this. Why don't you go to Jesuit? I'm like, man, what am I, 14, 15 at the time? I have no idea what's going on. I don't understand the nuances of they're upset that they're stuck at this high school and I have the chance. It was beyond me at the time. So last game of the season, what did you know? We play Elk Grove. And they unmercifully beat the life out of them. So semester comes to an end. Last day of school, hop in the car. Dad tells me, congratulations. I was like, well, congratulations on what? He's like, you don't ever have to come back here again. I was like, oh, thank you. Unbeknownst to me, they also were rather upset with Kennedy's academics along with their athletics. So they ended up sending me back to Elk Grove, which I didn't have a problem with at all. Now, I come back my sophomore year. I played baseball that year. Same thing. I'm not a superstar. I played. This was kind of when my dream of being Bo Jackson started to die. Because according to me, I was the best baseball player, best football player. I was going to go pro. Win a couple World Series, couple championships, but I digress. Now, my junior year, this is the good one. This is when Tru Sav he's kicking. He's in the womb. He's about 8-9 months. He's ready to come out. So my junior year, it just so happened that the team that I played on is probably one of the best teams that ever played in California. We won our games by an average of, I want to say, 28 points, 35 points. We had 13 people sign Division I scholarships. I don't think we ever trailed at any point during the season. So it was a different experience to go from Kennedy and all of that nonsense to go to the best team in the area. So that really had an impact because it taught me what it takes to win and what is required as far as hard work, dedication. Everyone has to be on the same page. Now, you may not like everyone. Like, that's just a given. We're not all going to like each other. But we're going to figure out how to like each other for the 60 minutes until you win. So, back to Elk Grove. Now, mind you, at this point, Phil, I'm a junior in high school. I don't smoke weed. I don't drink. According to me, LL Cool J and MC Hammer are the most gangster rappers there are. That's where I was back then. I didn't know. I was never really introduced to it. Now, I'm still going to church at this point. Every Sunday, I'm at church. I kind of graduated from Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. I didn't really have to go because I had practice every day. But I was still at church every Sunday. So I didn't really get to go out. There was no going out on Saturday night till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And it didn't matter if you were sick. What your excuse was, you were going to church on Sunday. So now my senior year comes. Now at this point, I was living with, well, technically, we told the school, I was living with my uncle down the street from the school because I had to live in the school district to play football. This is where the Tru Sav was born. He popped out here. He's, wah. Come on, bro. Hey, I'm doing stuff over here, kids. You guys got to chill out. Shh, sit down. Thank you. Yeah, I missed you guys too. All right. That's my fur children. They just can't. They can't stand to be without their dad. So I'm a senior. This is my time to shine. This is where I met. I met Smokey the Bee, L Boogie, Extremely E was here during this time. So now I have an apartment in high school. This is not a recipe. This is not a winning recipe right here. The very first week of the year, we have a welcome back to school dance. So being the kind-hearted person that I am, I decided to throw a party. And I decided to invite 400 of my closest friends. Now, 400 people obviously don't fit into an apartment. So there was kids inside, there was kids outside. They're drinking, they're being loud, all of this. So, of course, the cops come. I get drug out of the house. It's me, maybe 4 or 5 other people. Police get called. The coach gets called. Now, it's maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. We have a scrimmage tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning. So now my parents have to drive all the way from across town to come pick me up, to come take me back home, to bring me back in the morning for this scrimmage. Needless to say, things did not go well, not only in the scrimmage, but with the coaches. But the thing is, they can't do anything about it because, number one, it happened outside of school, and number two, it's my house. So what can you say? And that was where the legend began. So now it's because I didn't discriminate. I didn't say, oh, only the cool kids can come, or only the black kids can come, or only this. I invited everybody. The skater kids, the nerdy kids, the outcast kids, the cool kids, the not cool kids, that kid that I saw walking down the hallway. And that's what made everyone like Tru Sav. was that it was all inclusive. It wasn't, there was no hierarchy. There was no, you're not invited to my house. It wasn't that kind of party. Now, this was, let's see. So football ended. I got kicked off the team this year. I was a Sav. I wasn't really built for organized sports, but I was good. I was decent. I was good enough to get a scholarship. It wasn't for me. I was good, but I had no passion for it. It wasn't really my thing. Now, this was the first time in 17 years that I didn't have anything to do after school. I'd never gotten out of school before and just had 2 hours to kill until my parents got home. I had always played a sport up until this point. So this is when I learned about the wonders of weed. I think the first time I ever smoked, it was at the Western Festival with a local sportscaster's son and his friend. And it was like how high? Blunts, bongs, joints, gravity bongs, whatever you want. It was the time of my life. It was fun. So all of that happens. I graduate, and this goes into the summer of 2000. Now, if the Tru Sav was born my senior year, I would have to say his maturation process started this summer. This is probably the best summer that me and my friends ever had. Because I graduated, I had a car, I was going to, where was I going? I was going to American River College. Me and Cameron were going to the AR. So we're playing football, we're doing all this type of stuff. And this is where things took a turn, because this is where I realized I don't have to go to class. No one cares if I go to class. As long as I stay eligible, that's the only thing that matters. And I'd have to say that was a little too much freedom. I needed someone to rein it in for me. But it was a good time. I don't think I passed a class that semester. It was fun though. And this summer, the summer leading into it and the summer after that was when the rest of the Savages graduated. The Savages being Dagwood, Extremely E, Phonetics, Simply, D-Rock, Jimmy D, Kevin Goku, Super Saiyan. There was a whole bunch of us. And we were doing wild stuff. Silly stuff. Run around making wrestling videos of wrestling in public and showing up to parties. But we would show up to parties 30 deep. And we weren't there to bully people or anything like that. We would show up. Because this is back in the day when people still had house parties and it was safe to go to house parties. We would show up with a 30-pack alcohol that we probably stole. Some weed, everything. We show up early, show up about 8 o'clock and be like, hey, heard you having a party. Now, people usually have one of two reactions. It was either, hey, come on in, everything's fine. Or they would say, no, you can't come in. Which at that point, we would say, look, you can either let us in, and we're here to have a good time. We got some alcohol, there's some girls with us. Or we can tear your house apart. What would you like? And 10 times out of 10, they always took us as their security, because now you have 25 to 30 people that are on your side. I'm not necessarily proud of my savage days, but that's what we were doing. We were kids. We didn't know any better. And it was, again, we weren't, the name, when you heard Tru Savages or Tru Sav, you didn't think bad people. You just thought, hey, those are those guys, because we all played sports. So you knew us before we got there. Our reputation preceded us. It was nothing bad. Did they like to party and act a fool? Yeah. But it wasn't anything malicious, or it was, oh no, so-and-so's coming. We were kids. Now, I'm still playing football at City College. So I go to Sac City after I leave ARC, and it's more of the same. We party. I kind of pay attention in class now. I take I did take a yoga class, or no, I'm sorry, I took a meditation class. A lot of what is it? Hare Krishna, something or other, and that was really interesting because I don't, I wouldn't say that I have a temper. I was relatively in control of myself, but that kind of took me down a path of holistic thinking, maybe. Because up to that point, I had never thought of any kind of yoga meditation. Like at that point, it was something silly to me, but I liked it. It was interesting. It was something to do when I wasn't not going to class. So again, I didn't go to class. I didn't particularly care about football, so I washed out about a year or two. So again, I've spent at this point 3 years at a junior college, and I have no degree. So whatever. I ended up at this point I worked for my dad. He worked at the Sacramento Black Chamber of Commerce, and I was his personal assistant. So this afforded me the luxury of meeting all types of people in city council. I met the mayor. Certain events that we would get to, everything was VIP. Anytime there was a show, we would get a packet full of tickets. The state fair, we had VIP tickets. Drink coupons, front row seats, anything you wanted. So my experience was a little bit different. On the one side, on the weekends, I'm acting a fool. I'm out here at parties. We're driving, acting crazy. But my day job, I'm a suit. This, more than anything, would probably mold who Tru Sav is now and became. Because had it not been for that job, I probably would have worked regular entry-level minimum wage job. This way, I got to see not only how government works, but how you can operate without a degree. Like, this was when I learned all you need to start a business is money, and you can hire people with degrees. So at that point, education didn't really become too important. Now, when I say education, I mean a piece of paper saying that you graduated from this institution. Now, if you're going to be an engineer, an architect, a doctor, obviously you're going to need a degree. But for the rest of us, you don't necessarily need a degree. All you need is the money. Now, if that's what you want to do, God bless you. But I'm not in that particular category. Now, if the Tru Sav was an adolescent back then, he was a teenager now. So I was living by myself. Now I'm living in Greenhaven. Greenhaven, again, is a middle-class suburb. It's me in a 3-bedroom house by myself. So I was doing what single people do. We were having parties and acting up, so on and so forth. I started playing semi-pro football, which is a fancy word of saying rec league football. It's not nothing anything fancy. So this is what I did. I would play football, go to work, do all this kind of stuff, live my life. I still had a desire to go to school. Like I still read and would try to learn stuff every now and then. I wasn't going to church as much, obviously. Once I turned 19, that was out the window. I mean, I had partying to do. I had women to chase. Like that's what it was. Like I was free. I didn't live in my parents' house. There was no rules, regulations. So I was wild. So to this point, I ended up moving out of that house, and I moved to the Mac house. Now, the Mac house was the bachelor pad. That was wild. Those were good times. I'm sure we'll have an episode about that at some point. Now, up until this point, I'm drinking, smoking, chasing women, all that type of stuff. And it was starting to catch up. At this point, when I was 20, I think I got my first DUI. Well, it wasn't a DUI, it was a wet reckless. I blew a .01. I had a drink, but because I was under 21, I got a DUI. Maybe 5 months later, I turned 21 and got a real one. So that was my introduction to the criminal justice system, and not on the right side of it. So I still didn't really have it together. I was still just kind of living my life, half-ass working, half-ass playing football. Not really sure of what I wanted to do. Because up to that point, my dream had been, I'm going to go to the NFL. After I win all these championships, I'm going to get out, and then I'm probably going to run for president, and I'm probably going to win, and I'm going to change the world, and so on and so forth. Ooh. And live happily ever after with my supermodel wives. And obviously, that didn't happen in any way, shape, or form. But at that point, when I was still playing football, one life-changing event happened. I had an uncle, my mother's brother, who lived in Watertown, New York. If you know where that is, points for you. And he would always call, and he would call on birthdays, call on holidays. And, you're a kid. It's your uncle. Hey, how you doing? Hey, man. Hey, yeah. All right. So one summer, he invited me out to New York. So I was like, all right, well, I haven't seen you in a while. I'll go out there. So I go out there for a week. I am probably 23, 24 at this point. So it's whatever. It's a weekend or a week-long trip. I go out there, and the first thing that happens, my cousin picks me up from the airport. Blunt already rolled. I was like, wow, this is the red carpet treatment. You really know how to treat a player. So we go out there. We get to the house. Talk to him. Hey, Unc, what's going on? Whoop, whoop, whoop. We go to buy some weed. Now, I'm laughing because as far as I knew, Uncle Sonny was church just like my mom. So for him to be like, hey, let's go get some weed, I'm like, okay, that's what's up. So we go, and the first thing he says is like, do you smoke with your dad? I was like, nah, like that's not even in the playbook. He said he's not going for that. He's like, well, I'm not your dad. I'm your uncle. So whatever you want to do, like as long as you let me hit it, it's all good. I was like, all right, man. So I'm already kind of enjoying like, all right, this is what's up, man. Like, I wish I would have known. So I'm out there for a week, enjoying myself, hanging out with cousins. We're going to the club, chasing women, stuff like that. So I ended up coming back early. I could have stayed another week. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back. I got this little football game I'm playing. It was cool, Unc. We're going to do this again. I'm about to come back. So we go. I ended up coming back. The football team that I was playing for at the time, I guess, felt some kind of way that I was out of town for a week and couldn't come to practice or something. So they decided to bench me for the entire game. So I'm like, well, what did I come back early for if you're not going to play me? And this is kind of Kennedy repeating itself all over again, where you have people influencing my life because they're upset that my life is, dare I say, better than theirs? Well, I shouldn't say better. Maybe not even better. It's maybe my attitude towards them is what did it, I'm sure. But, hey, it's neither here nor there. So that happens. This is the summer. Maybe 4 or 5 months later, I am coming down the stairs, going to church, another Sunday morning. It was NFC Championship weekend. I want to say Packers and somebody. It was Brett Favre and somebody. I remember coming down the stairs, and my dad just tells me, hey, your uncle died. And at the time, I kind of brushed it off. It was just like, oh. And I went about my day, and I didn't really think about it. And then I thought, like, damn, I just saw him, like, a couple months ago. Like, that's, wow. And it didn't really hit until maybe a couple months later where I thought, like, wow, that's deep. Because up to that point, I had never had a family member die. I mean, I had my grandmother. My grandmother's died when I was 2, 3, so you didn't really think about that. I had a grandfather die in high school, but we weren't that close, so it wasn't the same. But that kind of hit close to home, and that was kind of like, wow. So it was a little late in life to have that feeling. So, mind you, I'm still living on my own, living my life. I'm still partying like a rock star, enjoying life. I didn't know that that would be the catalyst for what was to come. Because at this point, I had just got my license back. I was maybe, because DUI stayed on your record for 7 years. I was 6 years and 11 months, and I got another DUI. Because, yeah, I know. It hurts to even say it out loud. But this was the point I realized, like, maybe I need to stop this. Like, maybe this isn't a good course of action. And that was when the Tru Sav he's in his 20s at this point. He's an animal. Like I said, he got his third DUI. So I'm making a conscious effort at this point to not really booze it up like I used to. Because, I mean, at this point, if I get another one, at the time, the law was if you get 3 DUIs, you're going to prison. And I wasn't going to go to prison behind drinking. Like, that didn't make any sense. So I was still working. So, I mean, I would monitor my drinking. I didn't drink like I used to. And at the time, I was only 25, maybe 26. So I had one weekend that I will never forget. I was at a friend of mine's house. My friend Smokey the Bee calls me. It was the weekend. It was the last time the 49ers played the Raiders in the preseason. So it had to be 10, 11 years ago. And he calls me. He's like, hey, my man's girl's out of town. We got the house to ourselves. Come through. This and this and this. Dude just got a new car. And I was like, man, I can't. There's this girl that I'm dating. I'm supposed to go to her house. I can't even really be drinking like that. I've already been drinking today. I don't want to drive across town. So I'm thinking I'm being an adult. And so he's like, oh, man, come on. And this is my man. Like, this is my man's. So I'm like, he's like, oh, man, it's cool. Don't worry about it. We'll hang out when you get back. So I end up going out to, where does she live? Petaluma or something. So I go out there, and the weirdest thing, when I'm out there at maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, like I just woke up for no reason. Like, just out of nowhere. It was strange. Never happened before. So whatever, go back to bed. Me and her come back. We're at Chevy's, and I get a text message. And I open the text, and it just says, Smokey died in a car accident this morning. And I lost it. Like, up until that point in my life, I could recall all the times that I had cried. And I'd lost it in the restaurant. I had to go outside. I didn't know what to do, what to say. I immediately drove to his parents' house. Like, immediately. And I knocked on the door. His dad came to the door, and I was like, just tell me it's not true. And he was like, come inside. And we couldn't talk for 10 minutes. Like, we just looked at each other and cried. It was the strangest thing. And come to find out, he and the guys he was with, of course, they were all drunk. And the guy had got a new car. And they decided that they were going to take the car for a spin, whatever. And my man was driving. And he was driving, got into an accident on the freeway, and died. And that was the one. Because that was my man. And for that to happen in the way it happened, and I had just talked to him, like, that crushed me. Like, that was any type of, not necessarily abstinence, but any type of regulation that I had on my drinking, that went out the window. That was, I showed up to the funeral drunk. Like, it was bad. Like, that was the summertime, 2008, summer of 2008, I think. So that was bad. So that was rough to deal with. So now, later on in the year, go through the holidays. Christmas time rolls around. It's Christmas Day. kind of moved on. It still hurts to think about, but I'm moving on. I get another text message, Christmas Day, completely different situation. Look at the text message. Cannon's dead. I'm like, what? What is? What did I do to deserve this? Like, this is. Now, I didn't really get into who Cannon was, and I can't really. We'll get into that a whole other day. But this one, if Smokey's death was bad by it being tragic, Cannon's death was worse because he chose it. And what I mean by that is he had a medical condition. Now, when I met him, he played sports, active, he was in the service. And when he had got out, he found out that he had a medical condition. And the doctor pretty much said, you're going to have this, I guess, some sort of, what is it, like a pacemaker or something. And you're going to have it for the rest of your life. And it's going to affect how you walk, how you talk, how you breathe. And his faith was such that he said, look, I don't want that in my body. If I have to live my life with this thing in my body, I don't want it. So the doctor's like, but if you don't have it, you're going to die. And he's like, well, if that's what God wants, then that's what God wants. Now, whether or not you believe, that's not the point. But the point was that he made a decision that he just wasn't going to live like that. And to be as young as he was, I mean, we're talking early 20s. Like, at my point in life right now, I don't think I could make that decision. And for him to make that decision, it went, because I didn't know at the time what had happened, but when I found out at the funeral, I can't say it made it worse, but it almost kind of made me take a step back and think about my own life and what I was doing and how I was living. And it's like, that's a stand to make. And it made me reflect on what I was doing and how I was living and what was I really accomplishing. Like, I was living for the weekend. Like, yeah, I was working and yeah, I was doing whatever, but I wasn't really doing anything. So now those two coupled, and that was just more fuel for the fire. So it was just more nonsense for me. The girl that I was dating, we were still dating after this. Like, this is 4 or 5 years later. She ended up moving to Bakersfield, of all the places in the world. So she would always tell me, oh, come out here. Like, you just need to change the scenery, this and this. I would go visit time to time. I'm still hanging out. I'm still in the streets. I'm still doing whatever. So one day, I parked my car in front of a friend of mine's house, like I normally do. And they wake me up in the morning like, hey, man, somebody hit your car. So I'm like, of course. If it's not one thing, it's another. So sure enough, I go outside and someone backed into my car. But they were nice enough to leave a note. So I called the people. I called the insurance people. Insurance adjuster comes out. And I owned my car at this point. So the insurance adjuster tells me it's going to cost $3,600 to fix. There was a dent in the quarter panel in the door. They said it was $3,600. So I did what any responsible person would do. I cashed the check. I gave my dad $300, and I drove to Bakersfield. I left Sacramento in my rearview mirror, and that was it. I moved out there, and when I moved at the time, I had moved out of the Mac house, and I moved back into my parents' house. Now, this was a low point for Tru Sav. Because up until that point, I'd always lived by myself. I'd always had a job. Up to this point, I wasn't really working. I was half-ass working. I'm getting on my parents' nerves. And I didn't understand why my dad always had an attitude for me. Anytime I came home, I stumbled in through the night, he always had some shit to say to me. What are you doing, man? You're not doing this, you're not doing that. Ooh, which was relatively true. But I didn't feel it at the time. So when I moved and I didn't really have anyone to talk to, I ended up talking to him most of the time. So it changed our relationship because now I had to talk to him every day. Like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And our dynamic changed because now I wasn't the freeloader at the house. I was the kid that had moved and was doing his own thing in another city. So it was a welcome change. Now here's the thing about Bakersfield, for you who don't know. Bakersfield is hot as I don't know what. So there was no real let's sit up and drink all day and all this type of stuff. That really didn't happen. And I didn't know anybody, so I couldn't just go get weed from anybody. So I was sober most of the time. Not really by my choice, but So I moved probably in March or April of that year. So we go through the summer. Holidays are coming up. I'm not really a fan of the holidays for obvious reasons. And the girl that I was dating, her mother passed away. So she's dealing with her stuff, and I'm telling her, it's like, oh, man, you got to be strong. You can't deal with this. You can't do that. Da, 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 da. Well, lo and behold, my dad dies the next week. So now this is, if Sonny was bad and Brandon was worse, and then Cannon was worse, this was the showstopper. Because now, not only did it hit home, but this was the only person that I was talking to when I moved. I might still talk to my mom. I still talk to my other family members, but my dad was my hero. I mean, there was nobody better than Pops. He was the coolest person you knew. He was the flyest. He had the Porsche when I was a kid. All the ladies loved him and the men wanted to be him. And I wanted to be just like him. So when he died, that was the end of the world. Like that was the one that almost broke me. Because it was, how do you come back from your hero dying? It was like when Superman died. Like, what do you do? So that was rough. I think, had it not been for the girl I was dating, it would have, I don't know how I would have dealt with it. I probably just would have went deeper and deeper and deeper. But luckily, she was there, and that helped out. That helped out immensely. But it's still something, even to this day, it's hard to even think about. Because how do you replace your hero, and now you have to become that? That's a deep one. So that happens, and we're still in Bakersfield at that point. Now a few years have gone by since that happened, and she gets a call from a job in the Bay Area, which she of course takes, which brings me to the point we are right now. And I know you're asking yourself, well, how old is Tru Sav at this point? I would have to say Tru Sav is about 50. He's kind of tired. He's not really living it up like he used to be now that we moved. But one important part of the story that I left out was before the move to Bakersfield, probably the most important part of the story happened. When I was out here living it up, being reckless, I got arrested one more time. This wasn't for a DUI. This was for something really stupid that we'll talk about another time. And I get arrested. As a matter of fact, I remember the day. I got arrested on October 11th, 2012 at 12:34. I remember that because if you write it down, it's 10/11/12 at 12:34. I'll never forget that. And I did 30 days. Not even that bad. And the girl that I was dating at the time, she came to visit, and we had gotten into an argument about something. I can't even remember what it was. And through the glass, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "What are you going to do, jailbird? Are you going to come to the glass and do something?" And in that moment, I just thought, like, wow, she's right. Like, what am I doing? And she told me, well, number one, she told me I needed better friends because the way I was going, not only was I going to end up in jail forever, but I was going to end up in jail without her. That this was the last time this was the last time that she would come to visit. This was the last time she would put money on the phone, anything. She had worked too hard to date someone who had no goals or aspirations or anything like that. And at first I was offended. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm making money, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And she's like, yeah, but I have a real job. Like, I can't date someone like you. And it made me kind of take a step back and think, like, what am I doing? Like, I went to private school. I was an athlete. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't do any of this. Like, what am I doing? So, obviously, for the rest of my wonderful stay in the I Street Hotel, I thought about it. And from that day forward, whenever I had to remind myself kind of that moment. And so whenever people would ask me, how are you doing today? I would say it's the best day of my life. Because up to that point, I was hiding my feelings behind all the people that had passed away and all the other stuff, all my shortcomings behind alcohol and drugs. Not drugs, behind weed and alcohol. Weed's not a drug, but we'll talk about that later. So I would start to respond to people like that. I would say, it's the best day of my life. It's the best day of my life. Well, that got a bit long to say every time. So I just started saying the best day ever. So every time that I would say it, it would kind of remind me, like, I can't get yesterday back. Meaning I can't change what happened. There's nothing I can do. There's no point in sulking about it. Now, that's not to say that there's not room for regret or remorse or even a little pity party. It's okay to feel bad for yourself every now and then. But when you become stuck in a cycle of perpetual self-loathing, that's never good. Then also, tomorrow isn't promised. Like, I might not make it. I might not even finish the show right now. It's not promised. All I can do is enjoy the day that I have right now, which is the exact reason why I wanted to do this podcast. No, let me stop lying. That's not what happened. What ended up happening was the job I work at, there's a lot of customer service interaction. And so every day when I talk to people, they say, hey, how you doing? I say, it's best day ever. Best day ever. Best day ever. And it started to become almost a challenge where customers would come in. It's hard to remember every person that you talk to. And they would ask before I would ask, so how are you doing today? I'd say, best day ever. How are you doing? And of course, without pausing, they would look me dead in the eye and say, best day ever. And it brought a kind of joy to them that it wasn't an act, that this was who I really was and this is how I would really respond every time. And there was one lady in particular that I'll never forget. She came up, I was closing one day, and she came up, and how are you doing? Best day ever. And she asked me why, and I explained it to her, and she was like, well, I wish I could feel that way, and that's not my experience. And I kind of stopped her, and I was like, ma'am, I don't mean to be rude, but this is your only shot at life that you have. And if the people that you're with don't make you feel that way, or you're in a situation where you feel like this isn't the best day ever, then maybe you need to change your situation. And she burst into tears, and I was taken aback for a moment. Like, I came around the counter and I just hugged this complete stranger, and she was like, thank you. Like, I needed to hear that. Like, she went into deeper detail about what was going on. And again, I just reiterated, I'm just a guy. I don't have the answers to anything. I just kind of live my life like this, and it's worked for me. And I explained to her what I explained to you guys, but obviously in a shorter form. And she just, I don't know what happened after that. I didn't follow up with her. I haven't seen her since. But that one interaction kind of changed how I felt about it. And that's the one that made me think like maybe there is something to this. Maybe people aren't just saying that. And again, I'm no Rhodes Scholar. I mean, Jesus, I was in junior college for 7 years and still don't have a degree, so I'm not gonna. I'm not anyone to sit on my high horse and pretend that I've got it all figured out. But that's why I wanted to do this, because I don't have it figured out. I'm not an expert on anything. I'm just the guy trying to live his life. Now look, I realized that was kind of deep. That was kind of serious. It's not going to be like that all the time. That was the first one. I just wanted you to understand where I'm coming from. So when I say the things I say or do the things I do, you kind of have a better understanding of me personally. Because I don't want it to be serious all the time. I'm going to be silly. I'm going to try to be funny. I'm going to attempt to be funny. I mean, everyone has their deep-seated issues and things that have happened. We all have it. I'll try not to dive into that too often. I mean, even for me right now, I try to deal with the heavier stuff by focusing on stuff that actually affects what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to talk a lot about finances, your health, not just mental health, but physical health, spiritual health, like actually having the best day ever. For example, I just came back from a camping trip with, remember that girl I was dating? Well, I married her. Trust me, the story about the wedding is amazing. Party of the century. If you weren't there, I don't know what to say. But it's going to be a lot lighter stuff. I promise. I'll have guests from time to time. I'm going to have some better intro music. It's not just going to be me talking all the time. I'll try to have. We actually got a psychologist. We got a nutritionist. We got a medical doctor. So I mean, I'm trying to put together a group of interesting people, not only to listen to, but they'll actually have something that can change my life and possibly yours. I mean, that's the whole thing. I'm not just here so you can listen to me talk. I'm here so that both of us, well, all of us, can have the best day ever. Not just you listen to me talk about how great my life is and all the type of stuff that I'm doing. Because I mean, I think my life is dreadfully boring. I think I just talk about it in a funny way. Or so I hope. So, with that being said, I hope I haven't bored you to death today. Lastly, but not leastly, the most important thing, questions, comments, and concerns, feel free to send me an email to bestdayeverpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to watch me attempt to have the best day ever, follow me at Tru Sav Comedy. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Or if you want me to see you have the best day ever, I mean, I'm always open for suggestions. If you're living your best life, I want to be there too. If it's a hike, if it's a workout, if it's a seminar, anything that you got going on that you think can help me or somebody else have the best day ever, that's what I'm all about. I've got time for that. If you want me to come with you to your sports game or whatever, I'll check you out. But just a heads up, I don't drink and I don't smoke, so I'm kind of boring now. But I got some jokes for you, and you know what? You might even be able to guess. You can come on and we can talk about how we had the best day ever. So, with that, almost an hour. Not bad. So, with that, I'm going to leave you guys. And don't forget, you can't get yesterday back and you might not get tomorrow, so let's make today the best day ever. I'm going to holler at you.